Good afternoon, everyone. It's May 31st. Bill DiOrio talking to you from an undisclosed location in North Boulder. And I want to talk about item 5 on my list of issues, which is energy. When you come right down to it, that's one of the most vital things that the government needs to do is to ensure that we have a safe, reliable, and economical supply of energy, especially economical. We're talking about there's a huge difference between spending 50 cents or 75 cents a kilowatt hour and 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And I'm just afraid that the plan that we're proposing, that's being proposed by the state, is going to lean more towards the 50 to 75 cents a kilowatt hour, combined with periods of blackouts and shortages. So let's get into that, and I want to talk about this paper that I wrote in December of 23. In the paper, I was arguing against the idea that the only option we have in terms of nuclear is standard pressurized water reactors or these small modular reactors that require these specialized fuels. I agree with the nuclear folks who say that the green energy solution is not going to cut it, and I think that it's clear to that is the case. So in the paper, I'm arguing that we should be looking at a type of reactor that was developed in the 60s at Oak Ridge National Laboratory that uses, instead of water, it uses molten salt as the cooling agent. And as I'll explain, this type of reactor has several huge advantages. I mean, the two advantages that stick out most are, one, that it requires the minimum amount of enriched uranium. Enriching uranium is what you do to make bombs. It's expensive, and you've got that weapons association. And the other thing about these standard reactors, and even the new ones, they all have this high-level waste problem because they're using solid fuel, which then has to be taken out of the reactor when it gets contaminated at the end of its life, which is fairly short, and either put into the ground and basically buried, or reprocessed. And the United States does not have any reprocessing facilities right now. So basically what we're talking about is taking fuel out of the reactor when only a small amount of the energy has been used up and burying it. This cannot be an economical solution. Now, the state energy plan is something that is quite problematic in my framework. I think you'll probably agree. The state is talking about having a total electric demand of 12.6 gigawatts. A gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts, okay? The typical nuclear reactor is like 1,500 megawatts. So you're talking about 10 to 12 nuclear reactors. But in order to meet this 12.6 gigawatts of electrical demand, the plan calls for constructing 37 gigawatts of new windmills. And currently we have about 5 gigawatts of windmills. And then 56 gigawatts of new solar panels. We currently have about 1 gigawatt. So think of the scale of what we're talking about. 24 gigawatts of 4-hour battery packs. Think about it. These battery packs they only last 4 hours, all right? Right now we have 0.01 gigawatts of battery packs. So the total new faceplate capacities of this proposed system is 118 gigawatts, which is 9 times the actual demand. So I heard from a fellow by the name of Kirk Sorensen. He pointed out, and I thought it was a good analogy, that it's like needing to buy a car and all the cars in the market only have an 11% chance of starting. So you have to buy 9 cars at full price so that you'll have a reasonable chance that one of them will start. I mean, even if you do that, there's still a chance that you won't have anything starting that day because every car is only have an 11% chance of starting. That cannot be economical. So as I said, this is kind of called the Polis plan because the governor has been endorsing it. And the plan says that all fossil and nuclear fuels and their derivatives are not eligible sources. Okay, did you hear that? So the one fuel that is 100% carbon free and capable of driving the state at a 97% capacity level is not considered eligible as part of the state's green energy system. Only wind, solar, geothermal, biomass, and small-scale hydropower are deemed worthy of this energy system. So all of the oil, coal, gas plants have got to be taken offline by 2040. So that's less than 20 years from now. And think about this. This includes gas. So they're going to really try to run the state on just wind, solar, and batteries, and do this in the next 17 years. The other thing about the plan that is problematic is that it assumes that the electric demand stays constant between 2022 and 2050. But think about it. They're also proposing that all gas be taken out of people's houses and houses be heated with electric heat pumps, which use a phenomenal amount of electricity, and that they want cars. I think the plan is half of the cars that are supposed to be charged up with electricity, and they want to convert everything that they can to electricity. But at the same time, even with the population growth, they still think that the electric demand is going to remain constant. And that's wow, it's wishful thinking. So anyway, to meet the governor's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040, all utility companies operating in the state will be required to replace electricity currently generated with coal, natural gas, and petroleum with qualifying renewable energy sources, i.e. windmills, solar panels, and battery storage. And do this all just a mere the next 17 years by 2040. And of course, remember, nuclear power is not one of the qualifying sources. So we have an option, and a group called the Independence Institute, the Independence Institute, wrote a paper where they're proposing that instead of doing the green energy plan, which is going to be phenomenally expensive, that we instead build a series of modern new nuclear power plants to do this. And I'm okay. I'm all right with that, but I just don't think we want to use this. We don't want to just scale up the existing technology. We want to switch over to a new technology. In other words, thorium, liquid fluoride thorium reactors. Now, here is the one of the cruxes of the matter, is this the amount of nuclear fuel that is going to be required to run the system on nuclear power. So we're basically talking about using the standard approach, 14 reactors, 10 standard large reactors, 4 small modular reactors, or that's not reactors. This is the gigawatts coming from each of the sources. So we need 14 gigawatts. Remember that number, 12.6. So you're rounding up. You're talking about 14 gigawatts, and that's a total of 8 large plants and 12 small modular reactors for a total of 20 reactors. So the problem with this, there's 2 problems, is one, the amount of enriched uranium fuels, both low-level LEU is low enriched uranium, and high assay, which is high assay, low enriched uranium, that is required to make this happen. The low enriched uranium is about where the uranium is enriched to about 4%, 4 or 5%, and the high assay fuel, it's enriched somewhere between 15 and 20. But it's still it's a major industrial process, requires a lot of new construction, and it uses a huge amount of electricity. It would be nice not to have to do it. Now, the amount of new enriched fuel that the conventional approach would take comes out to be you've got the amount that's required annually in order to just refuel the plants, because remember you have to take the fuel out when every about 4 or 5 years you've got to repower these things, and so you would need 250 metric tons of low enriched uranium and 21 metric tons of HALEU in order to operate these plants annually. And to start them up, this is at their first, when you just get these things online, in order to develop 10 pressurized water reactors, you're going to require over 1,100 metric tons of standard low enriched fuels, and more problematically, 240 metric tons of HALEU. So that you're talking about, let's say we're doing this over a 20-year period, it's going to require 6,036 metric tons of standard low enriched uranium over a 20-year period, and it's going to require 660 metric tons of high assay fuel. So it's nearly 6,800 metric tons of enriched fuel per year over a 20-year period in order to make this happen, or 340 metric tons per year. Now the problem with this is, you can see this in this graph. Here's the crux of the problem, is that the blue line here represents the amount of enriched capacity from domestic concentrate production. And look here, in 2020, it went down to 0. Here's 1950 it started. It reached its peak about 1980, has been plummeting since then. So currently, right now, we have virtually little or essentially zero capacity to make low enriched uranium for civilian uses. And so we're getting it from imports. And many of the places that we are importing this from are not especially friendly. Like, I think Russia is one of our main suppliers of low enriched uranium. And so that tells you where doesn't take a genius to see the problem there. Now, HALEU production is even worse because we currently have one pilot scale operation at a plant in Ohio. Here's a picture of it. It's the Piketon plant. It's run by Centrus Energy. This is a pilot plant, and they think if they scale this thing up, in about 4 years, they will be able to get the production up to 6 metric tons. Now, 6 metric tons. Remember, go back up here, right here. We're talking about 660 metric tons over the next 20-year period, right? In order to operate these 12 small modular reactors that the state wants to put into the system. And the current capacity is in the country is a fraction of 6 metric tons, and maybe in 4 years they could get it to 6. But that's basically, you'd have to run that plant for 100 years in order to generate enough high assay fuel. And that would require a massive investment for these facilities, which would have to be, this investment would have to be added on to the cost of the reactor program. And so you wonder, wow, no wonder nuclear power is so expensive. With molten salt reactors that we're talking about here, you could probably operate the thing without any enriched uranium at all, because we have existing stocks of uranium-233 that could be used to start these plants up. So, and the second problem we have with the standard reactors is that because they're a solid fuel reactor, during the fission process, the fissionable material, which in standard reactors is uranium 235, that breaks down, and as one of the fission products is frequently a xenon gas. It's a noble gas, but it's radioactive, and it's a huge sink for neutrons. It absorbs neutrons like crazy. And so as the solid fuel gets contaminated with xenon gas, as it ages in the reactor, the reaction shuts down. And so you have to take these fuel pellets out when there's just a small fraction of the energy has been used. And you only have two choices. You either chop them up into a fine powder or dissolve them in acid and separate out the fissionable material and start over. That's called reprocessing. Or you bury them, both of which are very expensive. And reprocessing is, again, heavily laden with weapons implications, because you're pulling out all the pure fissionable material that can be used for bomb construction, and you'd be doing that for every plant, basically every year. It's just an incredible problem. Now, the reactor that they designed in Oak Ridge, this molten salt reactor. Here's the picture of Alvin Weinberg, who was the director of Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And the molten salt reactor that they envisioned would have two critical features. It would use this liquid fuel, which makes it a lot easier to operate. It would also use the thorium-uranium fuel cycle rather than the uranium-plutonium fuel cycle. And that means that it's not the same degree of weapons production. You could theoretically pull uranium-233 out of a molten salt reactor and use it for weapons production. But if you did to any significant degree, the reaction would stop because you'd run out of fuel. You need that fuel to run the reactor. So you might be able to get enough out to start up the next reactor. And the other thing about liquid fuels that is so nice is because it's a liquid stream, it can be continuously treated in a chemical process to remove the fission wastes and poisons. And you can add new fuel to it as you go. You don't have to shut the thing down. So this is very good. And the other interesting thing is the fissionable material in the reactor never leaves the reactor. It stays in it till it's burned up. The only thing that comes out of these reactors is the fission byproducts. So this is very important. And the only fuel that you add to a liquid fluoride thorium reactor is thorium. And thorium comes out of the ground as a byproduct of rare earth mines. And so it's really not, you don't even have to mine this stuff. And it has really no, other than making mantles for Coleman lanterns, thorium has very few uses. And so you're basically using a material that has very few uses, and you're running your energy system for it. Instead of oil and gas, natural gas and oil have got a lot of other uses, and they're very valuable, and they're getting shorter and shorter supplies. So we ought to switch to something, I've heard it called burning rocks, and that's a good analogy. Here's just a quick schematic of the molten salt reactor. You have a core with uranium-233 passing through a graphite element, which is called a moderator. Whenever the fuel mixture is in that moderator, it goes critical, and so you start getting fission, and the thing heats up, and it gives off neutrons. But when the fuel leaves the graphite core, the reaction stops, and so you're basically pumping the fuel through the graphite core. The reaction occurs in the core, and then surrounding the core is a blanket of this thorium dissolved, just thorium oxide dissolved in salt. It absorbs neutrons from the reaction going on in the core, and by virtue of absorbing these neutrons, it decays into uranium-233 over about a 1 month period. And this uranium-233 can be chemically separated and put back into the core, and the reaction goes. So you see, all you're putting into this reaction, into this reactor, is thorium. And then you're taking out heat, right? The hot salt goes to a heat exchanger. You get heat you can use for desalinating water, of course, generating electricity, various manufacturing processes, for instance, making hydrogen gas, making fertilizer, you name it. And you get a host of valuable isotope byproducts that are separated out during the chemical process and can be used for research purposes, and most intriguingly, several kinds of cancer can be treated with alpha-emitting isotopes, which is basically an isotope that's put on to like an antibody or something which attaches itself to the cancer cell. Then when the alpha particle decays, it gives off alpha particles. When the isotope decays, it gives off alpha particles, which then destroy the cancer cell. But because they're big, heavy things, they only penetrate a few cells, so it doesn't do damage to the whole body. Right now, this option, it's a great option, but it's not available because there's no isotopes. So basically, they reserve it for people who are on their last legs, when it could be used if it was more abundant earlier on in the disease, and a much more favorable type of a treatment. So again, the cost considerations. Again, it's too early to really say what these systems will cost, because we got to sort out all the things about who pays for the reprocessing and the enrichment, and if we don't have to do that, that's going to save a lot of money. Thorium, the liquid salt reactors don't need expensive and clunky containment structures, but they're buried underground, so that the shielding is taken care of that way. So we need to, at this point, be thinking more in terms of the technical feasibility. We know, Warren Buffett said several years ago, and it's stuck with me, that the only reason that he invests in windmills is because of the government tax subsidies and energy subsidies. The windmills themselves are uneconomic. So I would take Warren at his word. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to evaluating economic systems. And but if we can generate electricity with low cost and reliable nuclear reactors, especially ones that are run off of thorium, we can operate our electric system virtually indefinitely, using a system that is basically fail-safe. So that's really what I wanted to say about it. I would just, if you send me to the State House, you can be sure that I will be a strong advocate for advanced nuclear power, and will work hard to make Colorado a leader in this field, and with special emphasis on research and development of the liquid fluoride thorium reactors, which really would be a game changer. And I consider this really a providential energy supply. So thanks very much, and I hope that you found this useful.